Are you stuck? How about unhappy? Join Elena Chapman, author, mentor, and life coach for Magical Moments with Elena, as she challenges you to get out of the doldrum and start living your life to the fullest. Elena will help you take control of your life and push you to do the things you never thought you'd do. So get ready to take back your power and celebrate life with Magical Moments featuring Elena Chapman.
Welcome to Magical Moments, and I'm your host, Elena Chapman, and it's all about that ease and flow. Because when we have that ease and flow, folks, it is, it's an easier road. It's an easier road, but it all happens with our mind. And along with that, why do we create problems when there aren't any? Why can't we have more acceptance, more tolerance in our life? You know, that's part of ease and flow. Why don't we think, okay, you know what? That's different, but it's okay. Why do we always say it has to be our way or the highway? And why do we think that anything we think that is limiting is the right way? The universe is not limiting. Source is not limiting. Nature is not limiting. My gosh, look at the resources nature provides for us, the world. The world is getting smaller, and yet we stick to old beliefs that create us difficulty and hardship with other people, with other ways of doing things. Guys, take your hands out of your pocket, step outside that box, climb that ladder of success. And in order to do that, we have to think more in lines of newness. That's what thinking outside the box is. Yeah, it wasn't done that way, but guess what? It's not that way anymore. Time for something new. People, this world's getting small. It is getting so small. So people with new ideas, people with new coming from new areas, new ways of being, come into our life. Why don't we allow it to feed us with our creativity? Wouldn't that be so cool? I remember way back when we, when all my folks came over, and we weren't on the little Mayflower. We were the Irish and the Italian that were coming over. And if I remember, it wasn't the Mayflower. It wasn't that. No, it was a little bit tougher ride. And you know, I got a lot of backbone in my family. They weren't accepted. But yet when they were accepted, that's when big innovations happened during the industrial era and from there on. Because everybody pulled together with different ideas, different ways of doing things, different ways to create things. That's where real innovation comes. My guest, Rodney Patterson, very interesting man. This is going to be an interesting show. I don't think you've ever had me say that, so this is going to be fun. Currently serves as CEO of Learners Group, a consulting firm focused on maximizing the engagement of every employee and customer served by companies and other clients with whom TLG works. With more than 30 years of experience in the field of diversity, Rodney Patterson brought a wealth of knowledge to his position as Corporate Diversity and Talent Management Officer for Co-Bank. In this role, Mr. Patterson, he had the responsibility for driving diversity, inclusion, and engagement throughout Co-Bank and the farm credit system. Now, the Co-Bank and the Farm Credit Bank, just so you know, is not small potatoes. It has over $140 billion in assets, supporting the needs of rural America, and it has its headquarters in Denver, Colorado. So Rodney is not small potatoes, and I am so glad and honored to have him on the show. Hey there, Rodney Patterson. How are you?
I'm good, Elena. How are you?
I am good. Welcome to the show. And welcome to
for having me.
Oh, yes. And if anyone, you just chime right into my magical nugget there, a little bit about inclusion. So I'm very interested in what you have to say, and I know that you deal with a lot of this blending and meshing. I mean, I mean, what do you think? You're on the other end as far as trying to get people right in there, and when you see cultures get together, isn't it the most magical thing? I mean, I travel all over the world, and when I see a group of people get together that all have different backgrounds and different ways and different minds, I mean, that's a mastermind, and you can create so much more than you can if you're stuck with the same people you've always been stuck with who believe the same things you do. Am I right?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think, Elena, when it happens the right way for the right reasons, we see magic happen, right?
Right.
At the same time, the problem is sometimes because we operate with so many of the phobias that exist in society, it happens in a way that conjures up fear and causes folks to become victimized by their socialization.
What kind of fears? I mean, let's be real here. What are the fears?
Yeah. Some people fear differences because they're unfamiliar.
Yes.
And because they can't anticipate nor control, then it causes them to have anxiety raised within them.
Control issues.
Yeah, which could be a natural response in some instances, right?
Right.
What's also interesting is that you can have two animals from the same species, and even though they may be from the same pack, have a natural reaction that causes them to have anxieties raised and antennas go up and all kinds of things. And so that reptilian brain kicks in where you get fight or flight responses.
And I know that. My dog is having issues. He's a very big, almost 100 pounds. And when I go for a walk, he loves people. But boy, if he sees another dog, he gets all angst. Interesting. Right. But aren't we supposed to have a little bit more understanding, tolerance, a way to say, wait a minute, where am I going with this?
You would hope we would, because our minds are supposed to be more sophisticated. At the base of things, though, we're still reptilian. So some of it's human nature.
The human nature thing. I hate it when we use that as an excuse.
I'm not trying to offer it as that. Here's what we have the capacity to do that animals don't. We can rise above those tendencies and begin to figure out how to become more sociable. And in some instances, we do that. We do it well. And when we do, the beauty that you just described is what manifests. And when we don't, the challenges that we see are happening across the world is what we have to battle against, right?
Yes. And okay, first I want to define right now, because it really is never a define, it's just a given, and everybody has their own opinion on what it is. Racism and prejudice, are they the same, or are they just supporting, ideologies that are out there?
Yeah, there's definitely a distinction, and I think that that's part of the challenge. When I first got introduced to the concept of racism, what I was told was racism is prejudice plus power. So,
interesting.
Yeah. What I learned, though, is it's more related to discrimination plus power. And the real distinction between prejudice and discrimination is that prejudice are reactions that manifest in our feelings. So they're heartfelt.
Yeah.
Right? And those come from our stereotypes, our beliefs. Discrimination is the action that emulates from those prejudices. And so they're building blocks. In my book, Trumping the Race Card, I have something called the anatomy of an ism, where we move from stereotypes to prejudice to discrimination to an ism. So what an ism is, racism, sexism, any ism, is the systemic manifestation, the systemic and systematic manifestation of that discrimination. So it's just taking it one step beyond prejudice and going to the place of discrimination, where actions are seen. Because I can have prejudices against folks. I can feel a prejudicial way towards somebody. But if I never show it in any way, then you will never know. And it can really not do much harm or damage.
It actually changes. You know what I mean? Because it leaves room for opportunity to change it, you know?
Exactly. It's when the behavior is manifested that it becomes most problematic.
It's very interesting, and it is true. I think that with all the voicing, we've had a Band-Aid taken off of our world. I really do feel that. It was because of the last administration. I do think that he was in place to shake up the world and say, you know, all this stuff we're doing is a Band-Aid. The feelings are still there. We just kind of glossed it over with trying to be polite. But yet the feelings were still there. And I've seen that. I've seen the difficulty that people who don't think like me, look like me, have to go through every day. It just amazes me. Just little they're teeny weeny annoyances that make it difficult to succeed. And it's other people causing this because they don't like what you believe or how you dress or what the color of your skin. And they just cause these little incredible, it eats at you. It just eats at you. It would eat at anybody. You just, every day you wake up to these little hindrances that should be simple things that add up to mammoth hindrances during the day. You get beaten down.
Right.
Yeah. So what do we do when people, okay, so we got the ism, and that goes for anything. How do we back up? How do we get everyone to kind of say, hey, this isn't working. We're causing friction instead of flow. How do we back this up?
Yeah, I think what's important for us to do is to help people to understand where it stems from, and so much of it stems from our socialization. And so because we've been socialized to think and believe and feel a certain way, in some ways what has to happen is we have to get exposure and experience in other ways, or when we find ourselves leaning into those old patterns or learned patterns of behavior, it's about finding new ways to gain information or experiences beyond what's historically been our pattern of being.
Isn't it funny? It's like everything else. You know, people have trouble stepping out of their box. And their box is, and what is a box? A box is the beliefs that have gone into the family, learned by schools, by society, by what we listen to, what we believe, what we have in church, everything. And that box can either be liberating or it can be limiting. Most of the time, our boxes are extremely limiting. I always say that life is totally on the outside of the box. But you can't have part of the box and not all. You know, when you step out of that box, you are stepping out of all that stuff. And I think at this point in time, people want more than anything than to stay in the box. Look at what has happened. We had everything shaken up. This COVID thing, the government, everything kind of just shook up our world. And then we had all the protests. I mean, so many protests, not just with Black, or it was also all these other groups that I didn't even know they existed. They were creating new names, and they were full of hate and anger. We had all this coming out, all out of the woodwork. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, and now we have a chance to step out of the box and create something new. Now we have a chance to step out of the box and have dialogue, because everything obviously was shown to be unstable, because this could not happen. My gosh, our government, our whole capital was attacked. You know, that happened in France, and we called it a revolution.
Right.
Here we call it an insurgency. What? We have to kind of look at this and say, guys, what do we want to create? And are we open to start having dialogue? And how far do you see that being right now?
I do think we're at a place where we're having more dialogue than we were a year, 2 years ago. I do think that, and I think much of what's happened in the country, not just George Floyd, but the insurrection, those kinds of things are pushing folks to the dialogue table quicker and with more of a desire to have positive outcomes than in years past. You know, in some ways, it kind of reminds you of what was happening during the times of the 60s. I feel like at the height of social unrest that people are at least willing to leave that box of complacency that you talked about, Elena.
Yes, complacency. What a good word. Yes.
Yeah, and try to find a place where we can, if not experience common ground, at least make efforts and overtures to do it. And that's not going to happen without dialogue.
No, that's not going to happen without dialogue and vision. I think we need visionaries. But it is a time, it's a crucial time. And I wonder, you know, everybody always feels helpless. Or not helpless, but what can I do? You know, we all get into our bubbles. Someone who is working, you know, a 9-to-5 job doesn't see how they can make a difference. A person who, this has always been in history, you know, they don't feel their one little effect is going to do anything. They don't understand how powerful they are. I have this cup that I use to hold my toothbrush. It's a little coffee cup, and it says, and every morning it reminds me, it says, be the change that you want to see in the world.
I like that.
It is. It's a really good, and every morning, you know, as I'm brushing my teeth, I'm thinking, okay, that's right. I gotta be that person. It's not I'm that person that's the change, not my neighbor, not the person in Washington. It's here and now. And that's, I think if we get enough people make the change, not the government, the people. And how do we get the people to understand their own power? I mean, we are powerful, but what about just looking at some of these belief systems and saying, is this real or is this just something I learned from my grandfather or my teachers or some movies I watched, or why do I feel this way? Is anything being addressed to help the individual person to start to look at the world differently as far as working together? Yeah,
and I think to your point, what has to happen is we have to review history to see where people have been instrumental and influential in creating change on mammoth levels and mammoth scales in the past. Yeah, most significant acts in countries the world have happened because people coalesced, people took responsibility, and you know, it started out with a person, an individual, and it went from that to a movement. It wasn't just a moment, as they're saying these days, but it turned into a movement, and it stood the test of time. And once critical mass happened and we saw folks really begin to orchestrate change at the structural level, then a lot of the outcomes we see in society now exist, right?
Right, exactly. When you work with corporations and you're dealing with people in a corporation and everybody is different and everybody looks different, acts different, believes different, how do you get them to work together?
Yeah, start by identifying what are commonalities, common goals, common desired outcomes, common vision. It's just like we are as humans, we have more in common than we do in distinction. You know, underneath the microscope, this is what's so interesting about this idea of race. Underneath the microscope, we are 0.02% different.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, and the same is true as it relates to the things that we want out of life. We may have varying ways or methodologies or approaches, but at the base of it, much of what we want is similar. So even if we have different approaches and different ideas about how to accomplish the same task, then it's easy for us to land on what is it that we want and what relates to commonality, and then figure out in terms of our various approaches, is that a short-term or a long-term consideration that we need to give attention to, and categorize it that way so that it minimizes our differences and maximizes our common.
That's good. I like that. And I think that has to happen on a larger level also. But how do you, what is the perfect world to you?
I describe that as community.
I like that.
When you break the words down, you get words like communion, you get words like union, you get words like unity. So you can't have community without unity, union, common, those kinds of things, right?
Yeah, and an acceptance. I might have a nutty neighbor, but I love them, that kind of feeling. Yeah.
Or folks that are in your family that you may not be able to stand in an instant, but you still love them. Figure out how to do more than just put up with each other.
Yeah. It's funny. I did this. It's going to seem unrelated, but it's kind of got to a point. It has a point. So just follow along, folks. I went to a mastermind, and they gave us, this was supposed to be where we're sharing ideas, and and it was all women, okay? So we're all alpha women. We're all alpha women. We're all entrepreneurs. We all own our own business. We're all creators, right? So number one, you got a lot of that in the room. And then they put us out of our comfort zone. They say, hey, we're going to give you, we're going to do dance routines. And my group was in charge of doing country western ballet. Okay, so you've got 5 women in my group downstairs. We're a community now. We have to build something. We have to create something together. And yet we all have our own ideas and ways of doing it. We have one who is a wonderful, she's made millions in real estate. Well, she's flitting around like a ballerina because she loves it. She's not paying attention to anyone, which is great. We got another one who's considered, she just wants dance. She wants to see how her hair and what outfit are we going to wear. And then I have one who says, okay, we got to count. And no, I was the one who was saying, we got to count. And the other one's saying, no, it's repetition. So here we are. We're all coming from all different worlds, different beliefs, different ways of being, different religions, different colors. And we are trying to form this in 20 minutes. That's the world on steroids.
Right.
Yeah, that's the world on steroids. And what it took was we had to just say, stop. Okay, let's try to see how we can put this all in. Let's start listening and adding our 2 cents. And we actually created something in 20 minutes. We were in synchronization. We were all flitting around like little ballerinas that we are not. And we were making it happen. Was it perfect? No, but it was darn good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
That's the world, as far as I'm concerned. That's the ideal world.
Yeah, it's just about replicating that on larger scales, right?
Yeah, and it is. And it's about getting people to just, it's not that we have to understand, I think. I think it's more acceptance. And it's just saying, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there's a better way. Maybe if I get people who don't look like me, maybe they have a better idea that we can incorporate. Yeah?
Yeah, I totally agree.
It has been a pleasure to have you on. How can people find you if they need to or want to?
Yeah.
And learn more?
Yeah, they can go to a couple of websites. The first one is www.thelearnersgroup.com.
I like that.
And the other one is www.trumpingtheracecard.com.
I love it.
And the book has nothing to do with former president. It's more about Trump cards are when you're playing certain games of cards like a game we played in Chicago called Bid Whist. Trump cards overpower the impact of all the other cards, so they nullify the capacity of other cards. They become the card that has the ability to beat out all the other cards. So that's how the book got its name.
That's very cool. Well, and yeah, it's true. We did have a Trump anyway, and the Trump did change a lot. You have to say.
Yeah,
it did. Oh, and for everyone out there. And then on the spiritual side is Soul Manifesto. And so take a look at Soul Manifesto, because we have an incredible group where we discuss everything under the sun. This is included. So if you have an opinion, yes, I'm open to hearing it. But I'm not open to hearing hate. Hate is the opposite of love. Fear, it comes from fear, and it's varying degrees, and it's not going to, it's so far from love, except it's the same thing as love. So it's really funny on that law of polarity, but it's not benefiting anyone. And it's too strong to stance that's not going to move. So we want discussion and love and how to make life better for us and Ease and Flow. Soul Manifesto. And that's called Soul Talk, and it's right on that page. Guys, spirit is love. And when we open to love, we really open our hearts to understand that, you know what? I can build a big, giant castle, but I can build cities and countries if I include more people. When I start to see that, then Spirit says, I am with you 100%. I love you all. It's all about that ease and flow. Namaste.
This has been Magical Moments with Elena, featuring Elena Chapman. If you missed an episode, download it now on iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, CastBox, Deezer, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. Learn more online at soulmanifesto.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.